Okay, picking up where we left off, we're talking about freezing panes so that the top and perhaps the stuff on the left-hand side doesn't change. So let's say, for example, I need a person's last name, first name, username, and student ID. I want that to be frozen. I also want the top line to be frozen. The part that I think is a little weird is to do this, you click on the upper the upper left-hand corner of where the data is not frozen. Okay, the first part where the real data is. Okay, so when I select this corner, what that means is all of this row and all of this is going to freeze if I click right here. Okay, so I click right here and I say freeze panes. So now when I scroll down, hey, come on. There we go. Now when I scroll down, the stuff at the top stays, and when I scroll left to right, in this case, the first 4 columns remained in place. Okay, this is a very good tool, and I have no idea why it's not in the textbook, but a lot of people use this. And to undo it, it's pretty simple. You go in here and just say thanks but no thanks and undo it all. Okay, very useful tool. Cool. All right. This only affects the scrolling, not row visibility. This has nothing to do with row. It looks like, like almost like you hid the rows. That's not what's going on here. Okay, this is just scrolling. So you remember the difference between sum and subtotal? Remember that, don't you? Of course you do. This doesn't affect that in any way. This is just view the scrolling, not the hidden. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build us a custom dashboard from scratch. I'm not using the book at all here. Instead, we're just going to go poke around and do our own thing. One of the things that's kind of weird is there's a lot of companies out there that sell add-on products. Here's an excellent place to go. In fact, I'm just going to grab this guy right here. If you're ever into making dashboards, this is a fantastic place to go to get those kinds of things. Now they have lots of samples, and in fact, the inspiration for the one we're getting ready to do is from that. So, for example, here's some really cool meters, and see the KPI scorecard, and production metrics, and infographics, and all these cool little, the traffic light kind, the red, amber, green thing I was talking about. Lots of cool little meters. We're going to build this guy right here. Okay, this example, we're going to actually build that one. Some of these things are you may have to pay money to get one of their things. Otherwise, you can make them yourself or just steal one of their designs. Okay, so let's kind of get started. A warning: since this is not in the book at all. You're going to have to be paying attention a lot to video. I really expect you to kind of, stop the video every once in a while and take some notes and pick it up where you left off, those kind of things, because this is kind of sort of important. All right, so we're going to do a simple one. Let's say, for example, I've got a, you know how the charities work and they always have a thermometer, what I'm talking about, this kind of a thing. Well, if I wanted to build a thermometer, what I basically need is a bit of data. I need, for example, here's the goal, $200,000, and here's how much you actually earn. And so I need to know the difference. Well, that'd be kind of obvious, right? That's just the two numbers that get. So if I was to select just these two, I don't actually need the goal part. And then we go to Insert, Chart, and I want one of those stacked columns. You remember how these little stacked column things work? Now, it has picked kind of an odd scenario. It assumed that these were two different values, and so that's not exactly what I want. So an easy way to convince the machine that I want, instead of having two data like this, I want them like this, is this thing called switch row and column, okay? And all it did was just told it, okay, I know what you're talking about now. All right. So I need to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of, for example, I don't need this thing over here at all. I really don't want that, this little, all right. So now I need to squash it up some. So I'm not going to squash the entire chart. I'm going to grab the chart area, okay, and stretch this guy over and make it kind of tall and skinny. Okay, so we're doing pretty good, right? I need to kind of stretch this guy out some because I need, whoops, this chart area to have some blank spot at the bottom. Okay, cool. I want my goal to go to 200,000, so I'm going to change the vertical axis. Remember how this thing works when you do in here and you format the axis. You get to tell it exactly what you want. So I want the maximum to be 200,000, not 250,000. Okay, cool. I want to change the color. So this one I'm going to right click. I'm going to go in here and format the data series. And when you click this thing, you got to make sure you're clicking just the one thing. And you can see it over here. Okay. So I'm going to go here and go format data series. I'm going to go for the fill color. And I'm going to say I want a solid fill and I want it to be red. Okay. This one I want it to be transparent. Okay, I want to have a black border around it, but I don't want it to have any color at all. That's not the same as white because I want the lines to show through. So if I'll go here to series, now you might think, well, where the heck is the transparency thing? Where is that in here? Well, it's kind of hiding. So I'm going to tell it go to a solid fill, and then now it doesn't matter what color. Because if I make it 100% transparent, does it matter what color it is? Nah, it doesn't. Okay, cool. Now the only thing I have to do now is I have to go in here and tell it that I want to do some outline. So let me go here, and I'm going to go in with the the border, and I want a line for the border, and I want a line for this one too. And all I'm doing here is just putting in a solid line. Okay, cool. I guess I should have made that the solid line being black, huh? That would have made a heck of a lot more sense. So black for this one, and let's go back and do this one as black as well. So border color, solid, and black. Okay, so now I've got my two things I can scrunch. Okay. So now it's kind of sort of looking like a thermometer, except for the little red blob at the bottom. You know, the bottom of the thermometer. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to fake it. I'm not doing that with chart. I'm just going to go in here and say insert and grab a shape. Okay, I'm just faking it. So I grab the oval shape, and I go here and I draw me an oval. By the way, if you hold the shift key down, this thing, instead of being stretched like that, if you hold the shift key down, it'll automatically, be proportional. So I'm just going to drag and drop this guy. I'm not going to spend too much time getting it perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to format this guy. And what I want to do is I want to change the fill color to red. And this time I really need to make the lines go away because they're not really going to fit. Okay, ta-da! I have made a thermometer. And in theory, you could kind of save this as like a prototype. And then the next time somebody says, hey, can you make me a really cool, charity thermometer? To reach our goal, you could put one of these things together. It's not that complicated. And I will tell you that I'll show you a trick. Let's say I want to move this guy, right? I grabbed it. I guess I'll stretch this guy up a little bit. Whoa. Come on, babe. In fact, that's kind of what I was trying to show, but not really. What I was trying to show was, come on, babe. Here, boy. Come on. Here. Okay, cool. What I was trying to show you that you have a problem when you start moving these things around because this is not a real part of the chart. It's kind of faked. It makes it a little difficult. In fact, I'm having trouble getting that thing lined up exactly right. So I'm not going to spend too much time in it. Okay, there it is. Let's say that that's perfect for me. Well, when it comes time for moving this, if I just grab this chart and went like that, in theory, since that is part of the chart element, everything works. However, if I was to resize this thing, the machine is going to say, and it's just not going to work. Every time you resize it, you're going to have to go in here and go, line this thing back up. It's not a big deal. But I'm just telling you that if moving it around is not too complicated, but resizing it is. That's just something that's a little tough to do. And you just kind of have to eyeball it. And there are techniques we're going to talk about a little later to make that a little bit better. But bottom line is, we built a thermometer. Woohoo! Okay. But before we get into making something a little bit more complicated, let's kind of go over some of the rules of the game of how to do custom charting inside Excel. All right. So you can have multiple objects on top of each other. You can have a chart and then have another chart on top. Okay, that works fairly well. Obviously, if you want the stuff to show through, you're going to have to be using the transparency color on an awful lot of that second chart. You know, the first one can have like a white background with no trouble at all. But the second one, if it has a white background, pop, you're going to see nothing. So you're going to have to get good at finding out the places in your chart where you want it to have a transparent background. Another thing is this whole concept of, okay, I've got two objects on top of each other and I want to move them, copy them to another location. There's a technique we're going to show you on how you can group objects together so that when you select it and copy it or stretch it or move it or whatever it is you're trying to do, that it grabs both pieces and moves them simultaneously. So it sort of like attaches. So I have two things on top of each other, but when I select one, I really want to select both. Okay. Now, having said that, another problem that comes up is now that I have them together, I want to select the one that's in the back. Okay, now let's say that they're the exact same. Oh, how about this? Let's say I make something small and then put something big on top of it. Now, how am I going to select the guy in the back? That's tough. It's practically impossible to select the correct one. So Microsoft Excel has this really cool thing called a find feature. Find and select tool will allow you to see all of the objects, and it graphically shows you which one is on top of another. All right, which one's at the top of the pile, which one's at the bottom of the pile. And so, for example, if you're having some visibility issues because one object is on top of another, all you have to do is just grab it in this little tool and move it up the stack, so to speak. Kind of cool. Now, the next one is sort of like a math quiz, and so I know you guys are not math majors, but just bear with me for a minute. Okay. Let's say, for example, that you wanted to build a fence out in the middle of a field, a standalone fence, okay? That's 100 feet long. And you know that the fence posts are going to have to be 10 feet apart. How many fence posts do you need to buy? And if you think, well, the answer is 10, you'd be wrong. I need 11 fence posts, right? Because the distance between this fence post and that fence post is 100, okay? That's the distance between them. But how many actual fence posts are there? There's 11 fence posts. Okay, now we're going to run across this several times when we start building these complicated charts. So I'm just showing you here. That's what that means, and we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. Another thing is when you have objects on top of other objects, sometimes you can't see what they're saying. For example, let's say you had a very dark blue background, and you put black text on top of it. Are you going to be able to see the text? Probably not. So we're going to use a technique in Microsoft Excel to like put a white halo glow effect on the text so that it makes it pop against dark backgrounds. Now, if you have against a light background, you can barely even see this effect. But yeah, hey, it's pretty cool. There's an interesting thing that we probably haven't run across very often, and that is charts don't like for cells to be hidden. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So here's our guy here. Now, if I was to go here and I want to hide that row, right? What happened to my chart? My chart went completely wonky because the chart, by default, has been told that it's just like the sum and subtotal kind of thing. It basically is told, I'm only charting those things that I can see. Okay. Now, when you're building a custom chart, that's probably not going to work for you. So we're going to show you a technique to go into data sources of the chart and then tell it that it's perfectly okay to use cells that are not currently visible. Okay, that would come in really handy. And then when we're building a custom chart, it could be like, it's like a speedometer. Well, if my speedometer starts at 0 and I have a negative number, that would be kind of funky. So we're going to cap those numbers to make sure they don't exceed. Let's say the maximum speed in your car is 100 miles an hour and you went 120. I don't want the meter, to go over the edge. So we're going to have to cap it at the low end and cap it at the right end. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this up again in just a few.